Welcome back to the French Rugby Podcast with me, Tim Groves, ex-Scotland international and adopted Frenchman, Johnny BT. And no Benji this week. Left him on the side of the road in Dublin, Johnny.
Did you catch up with him?
He was running for a plane.
He always is.
Caught it.
No, mate, I am recovered. So was actually meant to be over at the game with Benji for BT Sport, but COVID got the better of us. But we're finally out of quarantine. Everyone's tested negative, which has been fantastic. So now back to the beach, back to socializing, back working, and back to regular life in France. So no, it's good to be back. It's been a good week. The kids have been back at school for 2 days, which has been absolutely priceless, Tim, as you can imagine. And no, back to normality. So it's been great. How's your week been, mate? You were over in Dublin as well, weren't you?
I was there, Galway, Dublin, with Benji. A busy man he is. Stopped for coffees left, right and centre. So we caught up, a few bottles of wine on the bus between the two of them. It was good.
A good weekend. The rugby wasn't the best, but we'll get onto that, I'm sure. But no, a good weekend and nice that you two got to catch up.
The rugby in Galway was good.
Elsewhere in Dublin, it was not so much, but I'm sure we'll talk about it later.
Well, let's talk about it now because we had Zach on last week. He didn't even get off the bench, did he? Nothing he could do about it.
He'll be delighted not to have got off that bench and not been part of it. I don't know. There's so much written about, like obviously it's humiliation. It's complete humiliation. But how much of that is circumstances? How much of that is attitude? I don't know. But look, I know from arriving at Montpellier when I first played there, and the stress and the toll that playing the top 14 takes on you and all your best players, it's a different proposition. I came from the Pro 14 as it was the URC now, where your best players get rested. You don't get that luxury in the top 14. It's a total grind. So, like, I understand that I've been through both leagues. I understand the different attitudes for French teams when it comes to Champions Cup rugby. But look, the manner of it, it was just horrible to watch. It was car crash. But that's what you get when you have a side that hasn't been able to train together properly. It's had COVID, has to stick out the kids, is sticking out guys that are coming back from injury against the best side or one of the top 3-4 sides in Europe over the past 20 years.
And it's a difficult balance, isn't it? Because you mentioned the COVID issues they had. Nobody really knows who was back fit, who trained, who'd not trained. So some people are saying they should face sanctions for the team they put out. I guess it's not as simple as that, is it?
No, it's not. But it's always going to be easier for the teams in the URC because there is no relegation. Quite simply, they're not battling against any fear. The top 14, you lose a few of your top players, you lose a couple of games, and quite quickly you're down the bottom end of the table. And Montpellier have experienced that over the past couple of seasons, and they will not want to repeat that experience. So I can understand their choice in banking some players, even if they were fit, and saving them for the last home game this weekend before the top 14 resumes. But I think there has to be a different way of looking at the competition and making it a more level playing field, because you cannot have, again, coming from Glasgow, where they have enforced rest periods for players. Same at Leinster, same at Munster. You have guys like Johnny Sexton, who, don't get me wrong, world class. He absolutely is, but he plays 10 to 12 games max for Leinster in a season and comes off the bench. The rest of the time,
them are in the Champions Cup as well.
Exactly. Whereas you play against, when I came through at Montpellier, the example would be I played with Francois Tranduc and Fulgence Ouedraogo, who were the captain and vice captain of our side, and they played every single weekend in the top 14 and Champions Cup and internationals. So they were looking at 30, 40 games a year. So you can understand these players have to be managed, that their loads have to be managed. But the difference with French rugby is it's not federations that are managing loads. It's people that are paying big money and presidents that want their pound of flesh and need their best players on the field to represent their clubs. And that's the difference. So in my mind, there has to be a different way of looking after the different interests and making it a more level playing field. But look, it wasn't pretty. And you can go to different levels. The rugby wasn't pretty at all. It was car crash. And then difference, not like for Altrad, front of jersey, you're representing both the French national team, now the All Blacks and Montpellier, but to have that out there as, front of jersey, and that's what we represent, that isn't them.
Bordeaux had a couple of kids out as well, but on a more positive note, they played some pretty special stuff against Scarlets, didn't they?
Yeah, but look, for 2 seasons, they've been outstanding in both competitions as well. They nearly went the distance last year as well. And that's with Santi Cordero as well, hauled into play 9 last minute, the night before the game. And he was sensational. And like they managed to mix together the power play that they're known for under Christophe Urios, the power, the aggression, the up front, the sort of rugged D, the aggressive nature on the gain line, but then also some of the rugby, the French flair that we love talking about, the sort of sleight of hand, the ball handling skills, the ability to keep the ball live, and the continuity were also superb to watch. So again, a really, really good performance by a Birdo side that, as we mentioned, over the past couple of seasons have been superb to watch.
We'll have a bit of a chat about the final round of the pool stages and the various permutations later on. And we've got a big guest coming on to fill Benji's boots as well. But first, France have announced their squad for the Six Nations.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of chat about England's squad, a certain fly half missing out, George Ford, Orlando Bailey in. And there's one missing in France's squad as well, Mathieu Jalibert, but he's injured, isn't he?
He is. So he got through maybe 40, 45 minutes at the weekend for Bordeaux and came off with a sort of muscle pain, muscle strain. We're not too sure exactly how serious it is, but he's definitely going to miss the first 2 rounds of action with the French team. So he's being rested. But I'm figuring we'll see him later on in the tournament because he's just been in incredible form this season and last. So it'd be a real shame for him to miss out. The other one that was actually the hot topic was Antoine Dupont. And he's kind of been struggling with something niggling the past couple of weeks with Toulouse, and they've been very coy in the media with what they've said. And they said, look, just to wait. The French national team is going to give a press statement. They'll let you know what's happening. So there was a big question mark over his availability, if he was going to be fit. Unfortunately for the French team, he is. We saw how much he was missed at the weekend for Toulouse, and it would have been the same if he wasn't part of the squad in this French side. So look, fantastic for the French team, for French rugby, that he's going to get the green light and partake in training and the go ahead for the first round of games. Any
surprises in there or significant omissions? It's quite a big squad, isn't it? 42 players.
Yeah. So 4 people getting their first experience of the French team. Some more surprising than others. I'd say the most surprising for me is Daniel Bibi Bazirou, who again has only been part of, I think, 4 games for Clermont this year. And again, it'd be better to have Benji here to give you the bigger detail on his game. But in the games that I've worked on for Premier Sports, he's looked a little bit loose on that loose head side scrum time. So not a sure thing.
He's from where he used to play in the backs, right?
Yeah, so he's a loose head now. And again, really dynamic, but it's the question marks more of a scrummaging. And you've got Cyril Bay, you've got Jean-Baptiste Gros, who are your first 2 choices. But any injury now and he's shunted straight in, whereas before you could have had Collingar, Paeva, Prierzo, 3 guys that have been in the squad and been capped and performed at that level. So certainly after the experience he's had, he has been the biggest surprise. Physically very capable in the loose, but does he have the level to be an international scrummaging loose head prop? We'll wait and see. He's certainly the biggest surprise. The 3 other new faces, Yuan Tanga, the Racing man, who's actually heading to La Rochelle at the end of the season. And he was in the academy when I was in Cast. Again, such a talent, so dynamic, nuggety, combative, can play 6 and 8 as well, and contest really, really well over the ball. So Racing, another man in there, and I don't think he'll look out of place. He's performed very, very well for Racing over the past couple of seasons. We've also got Leo Birdo, who's come in from Lyon in the absence of Jalibert. He's taken his spot. And again, might be a surprise for people that don't watch too much top 14 rugby regularly, but he's limiting game time for Lima Sapuanga, who's there. He's been composed, great going forward with the ball in hand, decent in D, great goal kicker, and he's been absolutely bossing it for Lyon. So he won't be a surprise to Lyon fans, but to people in the wider world that don't watch too much top 14 rugby, he'll be a surprise. But again, he's been fantastic for Lyon this year. And the last one is Jules Fabra, who's just been exceptional for La Rochelle so far this season. I think he scored 7 tries or something. I think he's the joint top try scorer in the top 14 this year. I think he scored 7 out of 12 games or 7 out of 13 games. Very complete, again, aggressive, dynamic, can play 12, 13 and wing, so can cover a multitude of different positions, especially in the absence of Arthur Vincent, another guy that can step in. So look, 4 new faces. Will they get game time? We'll have to wait and see, but certainly exciting. And I'm sure our guest who's coming on in a minute can give us a bit more detail on Yuan. But exciting to have 4 more young kids coming through, playing regularly in the top 14 and giving their chance at the next level.
Well, let's get our guest on now then and ask him about Yuan Tanga and others. He's part of a side that don't have to worry about any tension or nail biting on the final day of the Champions Cup pool stages, as Racing have made it through comfortably. and we can have a chat now with their attack coach, Mike Prendergast. How are you?
Good, thanks, lads. Good, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on, and really good to have qualification sorted around early. You'll obviously want to win this weekend, but the new format of the competition, are you motivated by finishing top? Do you want to face an 8th place team, have the second leg at home, or is it less important than it used to be maybe?
No, absolutely. I think it's been our goal, I suppose, since the start to try and finish in the top 2. And I suppose where we are at the moment is that number 1. We have a game against Northampton the weekend, and it's just that you look at it, and I think they're 2nd or 3rd last in the table, but they can actually still make the playoffs as well. So to get into 8th position, so they've obviously something huge to play for. But yeah, look, we are where we want to be, and there's 1 game left in it, and we're hoping to finish on a high and get ourselves as high up in the rankings as we can.
And looking back quickly at that game against the Ospreys, Finn Russell said after the game, nobody's really happy with that performance. Now that the debrief and the analysis has been done from a coach's perspective, were there things that you could take about that you were happy with?
Yeah, he's right. There was a lot of stuff we weren't happy about, I suppose. Look, and it was credit to the Ospreys, because I think defensively, especially in the first half, they defended very, very well. They won a lot of collisions against us, and I suppose we didn't get the opportunity to play on our terms, which I suppose the previous Champions Cup game against Northampton we were winning collisions. Our ruck speed was really good, and that obviously, gives Finn and the likes more time on the ball, and as I said, it was credit to Ospreys, didn't allow us to have that time on the ball. So, but look, there was positives as well. We showed good character towards the end to I won't say pull away, but to get 2 late scores, and that was a lot to do with our bench, who made a huge impact. I know in France call them impact players, and a lot of times we're waiting for it to happen, but you could see a huge impact with the likes of Cammy Shah and Sedak Gomasa coming on. They brought energy, enthusiasm, and we were winning collisions. And after that, fortunately, it created a bit of space, and we scored a couple of tries near the end. But look, it was a tough physical game for 80 plus minutes. But as I said, we were a lot more comfortable the last 20 minutes. But so I think they were the positives. But look, there's a lot we need to get better at. As I said after the game, to go deeper into competition, we need to be better than that.
And more broadly, you won the last couple, but before that, you had a bit of a shaky run in the top 14 in November and December. Is it just been a case of getting players back since then, or have things changed behind the scenes?
Yeah, we had, and look, it's. I know every coach will say it's not an excuse. We had a big injury list, obviously, like every club with COVID, so we had everything kind of mixed in, and we had a couple of poor performances, obviously, on top of that. That as again for a club like Racing, which just wasn't good enough, and we identified stuff we needed to get better at, and I think probably in the last 4 or 5 weeks, our performances have definitely went up. Again, I think if we were to reference one performance, was probably, in which I alluded to earlier, was probably the Northampton performance. Things fell well that night. I just thought we brought a huge intensity to the game, and it's something, I suppose, coming from where I've come originally and who I played with Munster. Heineken Cup or Champions Cup was always, a huge priority. And you hear about teams in France about, not always turning up or sending mixed teams. The one thing I noticed, I'm in Racing 2.5 years ago, and the one thing I noticed the day I walked in, a few months after I walked in, I should say, when the Champions Cup came around, just the intensity and the focus and everything just went on to a new level, which was a great thing for me to see, with a team like Racing that, they wanted to win and they still obviously want to win the Champions Cup. They played in 3 finals. They'd lost 2. So the hunger was there. And again, I saw that, I suppose, against Northampton the week of it, and obviously through the performance. I think the weekend, as I said, we came up in short in certain areas. But there's definitely a level of that we just seem to jump up another level in terms of, as I said, our energies around the week and around the game, So hopefully we can, as I said, we're always looking to get better. So hopefully we can improve in the things we identified today, actually, in the video from the game against the Ospreys.
And when it does go right, you mentioned that game against Northampton, which is pretty much as well as a game of rugby can go. I mean, it was that good. It must be almost incredible sometimes to be part of a squad with that amount of depth, that amount of talent, and be a backs coach for them. You got Finn, Fickou, Vakatawa, Beale, Toma, Imhoff. I mean, it must be a fantastic day-to-day job, a fun club to be part of. And when it goes well, it must be incredible.
Yeah, and on a night like that, where things, as I said, they fell our way as well, we made them happen. And, you know, I keep saying that you can talk about having all those backs, absolutely, and we do, incredibly talented guys, but bit of a cliche, but unless you do it up front and provide a platform, and you know, you often hear about the scrum and the line out, and absolutely that's huge, but I have a big thing around the breakdown as an attack coach, and when we get that right and we win those collisions, that's when we really see, I suppose, the likes of Finn and the likes of Virimi and Gael and guys like this just really being able to express themselves. And going back on the weekend, I don't think that happened because we didn't win collisions. So as a backline, I suppose, as I said, we didn't get to way or impose how we wanted to play. But from a day-to-day dealing and working with these guys, yeah, it's look, first and foremost, I've always said it, they're actually an incredibly good bunch of boys to coach. There's good fun around them. They're all very different kind of characters and individuals. They know when to get serious, which is a big thing in terms of training. Once we're on the training ground, the boys switch on. But outside that, they're incredibly good lads to work with. Very, very talented, but very humble guys, and just want to work, want to get their detail right, and want to improve and want to win stuff. You know, and you can see that over the last couple of years, we've been very, very short, just short of winning the Champions Cup, and you know, semi-final last year in the top 14, the one in 2006. So we're not a million miles away. We just got to get over that hump and try and, you know, win a trophy soon. But as you alluded to, yeah, there's a lot of talent within that squad.
And on the flip side of that, if you've got all of that talent, it can be a case of if they do well, if they do the job, oh, the players are brilliant. If they don't, it's the backs coach's fault.
Yeah, I know. I don't think so. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think when you're a coach, it's all about consistency, you know, and I suppose that's the thing. Maybe, you know, you alluded to earlier on about we had a little patch there, I suppose, kind of a month or two into the season where we lost games. We weren't playing particularly well, and we just weren't consistent enough what we were doing through the 80 minutes. We were actually playing well in patches, and for half the games, but in this league, as we know, the top 14, you don't get away with that. So there's something we identified as a squad, that we just need to be in the fight longer and consistently, just our concentration levels, everything. And it's something I think that that's probably, I suppose, over the last, I said, 4 or 5 weeks, which has got better. So, and when we were losing those games, me as a coach, players, we'd all put our hand up. We've got to have that very open policy here. That's why as I said, the boys are a pleasure to deal with and a pleasure to coach. And, you know, we work in one way, so it's never any one person's fault. So, but yeah, when you win, it's obviously a lot nicer.
And one of those blokes, you mentioned the fun and the time you have away from the field, but the detail and the work that goes in behind the scenes. One of my ex-teammates, Finn Russell, I feel gets a bad rap quite a lot of the time, gets this maverick tag, but I know how hard he works behind the scenes, the detail that goes in, and the vision that we see, the rugby IQ that we see on a pitch that sometimes look effortless, but the amount of graft that goes in behind. I wonder, you give us a little word on Finn, the detail that you see being his attack coach week in, week out, how he operates, and what he adds to the Racing team. Yeah,
look, we all see that the talent he has is incredible, absolutely. His skill set, his ability on the line, things he can do with the ball. That's why he becomes so hard to mark and to defend. But there's work, as you said, there's work behind that. Finn is a guy, he's quite a discreet guy, as you would know. So he does a lot of his video work discreetly on his own. Stores it in his head. He's not the type of tenor, he's not the type of leader that's going to be, you know, roaring from the rooftops. He's not that kind of a type of bloke. He has it inside. He gets his little one-liners, his messages across, and he drives us well in terms of to get around the pitch. If you look, you know, obviously people talk about a ball in hand, 100%, but he's kicking, obviously he's short attacking kicks, and it's something we work together very closely on, that we'd look for that kick space. But also I think over the last number of years as well, his kicking in general has become a very, very strong part of his game. So He's worked on, and that's physical work. But in terms of his video analysis and stuff, he's incredibly good at finding space, knowing where it is, knowing when to pull the trigger, to go for that pass, to try and put a Kurtley away or a Virimi away or whatever it may be, and that doesn't happen by accident. Of course, he has it in his armor with his skill set, with his passing range, I should say. But he's a guy, as you said, discreetly, he does a lot of work behind the scenes in terms of his analysis, to have it in his head that he knows how teams are set up. So if he's going into fourth, fifth, sixth phase, deep into phases, he can get a general feeling how they defend. And that's why, I suppose, you look at him and you can see him and he expresses himself so well on the pitch, and he's very hard to obviously to defend. But and it's a credit as well to the players, obviously, that are around him, in terms of, you look at someone like Juan Imhoff as a winger, the amount of work where he does off the ball. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening off the ball. It's helping Finn as well, you know. And when it clicks, as you said, it's something that can be quite hard to defend. But to work with a incredibly good fella, good fun, which is really important as well. Good fun off the pitch. And but as I said, he's another one of the players that once you get past the white line, he knows when to switch on. He knows he's at work. But just an incredible player when things are going right, and he's in the groove. He's a hard man to defend.
And he's not a maverick. And you both talk about how hard he works. We all see him juggling balls in the warm up, and really, he loves the smirk, which some people don't like. But is he actually that relaxed? Is that something that he needs to do himself?
He's incredibly relaxed, and for me, I wouldn't be a type of person who would try and change that, because he performs, and that's his way of doing it. And I think if you take him out of that and you try to change him, I don't know, would he be able to, you know, potentially perform at his best? Then that's the way he likes to prepare, and it's something that works for him. And as we know and we've said, he's you know, up there in the top couple of tens, if not the best in the world. So what he's doing, he's not doing too far wrong. So but a very, very, I want that can have actually quite a knock-on effect, in terms of a positive effect as well, because he doesn't stress. Whenever he's under pressure, he just keeps things calm, and he's the same on the pitch. And as I said, that can have a good knock-on domino effect to players, especially when you're in those tight moments and in tight games, and you need someone to step up, and you need someone to be calm. And the boys know how he is, and they react to it very, very well. You know, I know there's certain ends there that, you know, are very, very vocal and animated, and look, that works, and players get used to that because they're training with them every day, and they probably know it's not something that they're doing to, you know, they're doing it to improve the team. Finn does it in a different manner, and it's just more of a relaxed manner, and the players feed off it very well. And the most important thing is, he gets his point across, he gets his message across, and in whatever manner you get it across, the most important thing is it gets across, and that's what Finn brings, you know. But as I said, it's not by chance we see a lot of this magic happening on the pitch. As I said, he scans teams, he scouts teams, he scouts defenders individually, he scouts the backfield, he scouts how wingers off half-field rucks, how to defend, to come up hard, is the kick space there. So he's very well equipped before he goes into the weekend, and that makes your job, as any professional, that makes your job a lot easier, you know.
And as your job as a coach, specifically as a backs coach, I'd imagine if you have a 10 that's limited in certain respects, it can limit your spec as a job and what you can expect and what you can get out of your backline. So does having somebody like Finn, who has such a wide and varied skill set, make your job more interesting, possibilities more varied, your different options in attack? Clearly, you talked about little kicks, the fact he's able to execute. Does it broaden yourself as a coach as well? It
does, a huge amount. I've learned a huge amount. We're always learning as we go along. I've been in, you know, 4 different clubs over here in France. I suppose 4 different challenges. I was with Grenoble and INX, which was great experiences. You're fighting to stay up, which made it really exciting. I know it sounds crazy, but that was the reality. You're fighting to stay in the top 14. And I was at Stade Francais for a season, and then come over here to Racing. So in all the different clubs and environments, there's been different challenges. You're working with different tens. Some tens are obviously different to a lot, but someone like Finn, I suppose he does. Yeah, you know that, I suppose, as a coach, you can get so much out of him, but it's got to do as well what's around him. And as I said, we're lucky here with the backs that we have in terms of talent, in terms of things like catch pass. You look at someone like Kurtley Beale, even on the weekend, we were losing a couple of collisions. We went to an edge. Kurtley gets one really good catch pass, puts Teddy down the edge, and you score. And that kind of separates the quality players, and you could see that. But as a coach, as I said, sorry, to answer your question, it does make it really exciting, because you're looking at what different photos and what different pictures we can present to teams on the weekend. Whether it's this match now, we might do something, but also something we do in this match, or if we do it a different way in the following match, it's painting different pictures to the defence. And with Finn, because of his skill set, he can make these decisions. He's probably the best 10. Sorry, he is the best 10, I would imagine, in the world, or I think he is the best 10 in the world, to make a decision so late on the line, whether that's ripping a pass across, or going on a little, as I said, half field, little kick space, little kick pass, I should call it, but really late on the line. That becomes really hard to defend. So, as I said, from a coaching point of view, there's a lot of stuff I've actually learned through how Finn plays as well.
You mentioned earlier, your job becomes very difficult if your forwards are going backwards. So how much are you looking forward to unleashing a back line behind a pack that includes Trevor Naokane, and how is he settling in?
Yeah, great. He's come over. He's here a couple of weeks now. He was back out. He was onto the pitch, with us today as a team for the first week or so. He was adapting, and just in terms of conditioning and whatnot. But he was out with us today. Really good fella. Really positive, chirpy guy. And he's going, as a player, obviously his quality, we've seen it over the last number of years, what he's going to bring to us. And what it does is, as well, we've the boys that are already in place have been going well this year. So it just obviously pushes standards and competition up. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what you try and build in clubs. And you look at the best teams in Europe, I suppose one that springs to mind, you look at Leinster at the moment, and the chart depth they have, and the depth they have is very, it's an impressive place to be where they are. So that's, I suppose, where we're looking to get, and we're always working on, just to try and really keep depth in every position. So, as I said, he'll come in. As I said, the boys are in place there at the moment, and but he's a world-class player. That's, he's got huge experience. He's got a great skill set as well as a prop, but also, it's more importantly for us, is what he'll bring in the tight exchanges.
He'll be massive for you. Absolutely massive. Let's talk a little bit about your coaching journey, because you mentioned a few of the clubs that you'd been at over the past few years. But initially, moving from young Munster to Grenoble, and you played at Bourgoin as a player, but taking that coaching leap from young Munster to Grenoble, how did that come about, and how big a decision was that?
Yeah, so I was coaching. I was playing with Munster my last year in 2009. And I was retiring at the end of that season. And Young Munsters, which would be my clubs for many years, which I played with. And I was finishing up with Munster and trying to see what I would do, go back into the big bad world and look for a job. Or I'd always, obviously, ambitions of coaching, but they're not always very easy to come by. But fortunately enough, my own club, Young Munster, were looking for a director of rugby, and it was full time. So I signed on there for 4 years. So as I was with Munster, I was coaching in schools, and I was coaching a bit with the Munster A team as well, which for the last 2 years of that 4 years. So I kind of kept my foot in the professional setup as a coach. Rob Penny was the head coach there at the time. And to be honest with you, Johnny, I in Ireland, you've not too a few more clubs than Scotland. We've only 4 professional teams. I know in Scotland you've 2. So coaching roles are very hard to come by. So I literally did up my CV and contacted any player or coach that was linked to a club all over the world, to be honest with you, from New Zealand to England to everywhere, trying to, I suppose, look for an opportunity, because I knew in Ireland it would be quite hard to come by. in terms of getting right back into the professional side. So Bernard Jackman was over with Grenoble at the time. He was into his second year. He was over with Fabrice Landreau, who's the director of rugby, and they were looking for a skills coach. And I'd known Bernard, and he set up an interview with me with Fabrice, and I came over, and fortunately he gave me the job, and I went in there as a skills coach. And as you alluded to, I'd done a year in Bourgoin as a player, so I had a taste of what the top 14 was like and the French league, and I loved it actually. I should have probably stayed longer than I did as a player, but I ended up going in there, and you know what? It was a really good role to go in terms of just my language. I the basic French. I was there for a year as a player. I should have learned more of it or got the language better, but I didn't. But fortunately, I came back, went into Grenoble, skills coach, and as I said, the role allowed me it was a year where you weren't presenting videos. You're in behind a small bit, and one, to get into professional rugby. Two, as I said, to improve my language. And once you have the language, as you know from playing here, things become a lot easier, especially for a coach, because it's a big challenge when you don't have it at start. And the most important thing in coaching is getting your message across to the players. And as a skills coach, I kind of had that luxury. And in the second year, I went in as the backs coach, and you're presenting videos. But obviously, as time went on, I became the attack coach, and I kind of led on from that. But so it was kind of a gradual step, which was really good in terms of I suppose coaching experience, but also from a language point of view, because I was really conscious about getting the language that my message was getting across.
And obviously, at that point, you didn't know you'd still be in France 9 years later, but it's a big move, isn't it, from a whole life perspective? So at that stage, was it kind of, you mentioned you'd put the CV out, you could have ended up anywhere, but you were willing to take any chance that came because you knew that coaching was what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I suppose absolutely. When I was 23, I was with Munster at that stage, and I did my shoulder and I did my cruciate in my first game back. So it was like, I thought I was going to have to retire, but fortunately Munster kept me on. But within that kind of year and a bit, when I had those injuries, and I was young enough as well, so I decided to coach just lower level coaching or lower level leagues or whatever. I was given a couple of opportunities to go in with teams, and it was just literally to get a taste of it, and just to get confident in speaking to groups, and I suppose just learning how to become a coach. And it was always something that I suppose that stuck to me. And I had an ambition that when I did finish, that if I could get into professional coaching, it would be something that would definitely appeal to me. And so it was something always in the back of my mind while I was playing. And I think that was a bit of why I went away as well. And when I went to France, I went to England, to Gloucester for a year. So I experienced different cultures, different ways of playing the game. So many different coaches, so many different players, and I used to always, as a player, I suppose, as a 9 as well, you're involved obviously in everything. I used to always just jot down stuff that I feel that would be, for me, that kind of, I suppose, was something that I would use as a coach going forward. So I suppose from that early age, I knew I was always going to be a coach. It just depended, would it be just with my local club at home, or would I get the opportunity to go abroad? And fortunately I did. And a big thanks to Bernard Jackman, as I always said, he was the one that opened the door for me.
And obviously in France, the 9 is the number 1. So as a 9 and a coach, did you kind of automatically sort of integrate into the French rugby culture?
I did. And as I said, the year even in Bourgoin stood to me a bit as well, But yeah, once we came over, I came over myself, my wife, and my daughter at the time, Emma. She's 17 nearly now. She was 8 at the time. So big change for them as well. We didn't know how long it was going to be for. And as I said, fortunately, I ended up getting the attack role in Grenoble, and I stayed there for 4 years. Did a year in Oyonnax, which was a great experience as well. A tough experience, but a really good one. Did a year in Stade, and I'm into my 3rd year in Racing. So every year as I went along, I really enjoy France as a country. I love the league. It's a very, very competitive league. It's week in, week out, non-stop marathon, but very challenging in a very good way. And as I said, every week, every game in the top 14 is, and Johnny, you would have known from playing there as well, just there's something special nearly about every game. So that's what kind of keeps it interesting. And I've just thoroughly enjoyed my time over here.
But it's a great way to do it as well, to pack up and take a skills role and to work your way up the way you have done is incredible. I wanted to ask you quickly, moving from Stade Francais, obviously your time in Paris, moving across to Racing and moving across to the dark side or the good side, which way you would have seen it before. What was that like? Obviously being part of the staff at Stade Francais and moving to rivals across city.
Yeah, I actually, to be honest, I didn't have too much time to think about it because I was in Stade Francais and I was actually on my way down to, not literally, but a few weeks later, down to Toulon, down to Patrice Galazzo. Patrice had asked me to come down there to coach because I'd played with Patrice in Gloucester for a season, so I would have known him. And I was literally nearly signed on to go. And then I think it was around April or May or so, Fabien Galtier came looking for Laurent Lebitte in Racing. So it happened really late. And Racing contacted Ronan O'Gara, and he was on the way back from Crusaders. And it hadn't been announced where he'd signed. So obviously Racing contacted him because he'd been previously there. And he told him he was going to go to La Rochelle just for a different challenge. And he said, look, try Mike and see what the story is. I know he's in talks with another club. So it just happened very, very quickly, quite late as well. So I ended up meeting Laurent Travers and had a good chat with him, and he showed me around with the players and or the rest of the staff and out in the training facilities. And it didn't take me too long to make up my mind. And then coming over, there was no
animosity.
No, I don't think so. To be honest. Not that I remember. Not that I heard. Maybe there was that I didn't hear about. But no, as I said, I settled in really, really quickly in terms of just being such a good club. It's incredible setup. As I said, the boys here, the players. I had two lads from Ireland that I would have known. I would have played with Donncha Ryan and then Simon Zebo I knew from home as well. So that made it a small bit easier, obviously, having familiar faces around. And but yeah, it's been a really good experience for all the years I've been here. But I suppose Racing, in terms of the club and the structure and the setup and the players, has been probably next level. All right, yeah. And
you mentioned Laurent Travers showed you around. Did Jackie Lorenzetti get the checkbook out and wine you and dine you? And what's he like?
No, lovely guy. I met with Jackie. I'd spoke to him over the phone and I met with him and signed my contract with him and stuff. And no, there wasn't too much of a hullabaloo. He's very down to earth, great fella. Not you don't see him a huge amount. He'll pop in, show his face, and little chats here and there. But he leaves you do your job, which is massively important here in France, because I know there is other experiences in other clubs that it might be the same as that. But Jackie he's a securing man to work for as well, in terms of he doesn't react straight away off results. Even when we had when I arrived the first year, actually, we had it was a World Cup year, so we had 13 boys away in the World Cup, and we struggled at the start, but there was never any panic from him. Recently enough, as you alluded to, a couple of months back, losing a couple of games, he had a quiet word or two with us, but nothing too much, to be honest, and nothing too extravagant. And so he's been a very good man to work for, to be honest. And as I said, sorry, going back on the setup, we have the facilities, how we eat. Obviously, if the arena, just everything here is in terms of what he's put into it and what he's invested is incredible. So to try and win something and win a trophy, especially European Cup trophy, is something that he really wants to get his hands on. It'll be a really nice thing to do if I'm still here, if it's this year or next year or whenever it is. And it's really, really for Jackie for what he's invested into the place.
No, he's done an amazing job. And in terms of you and your responsibilities, you've gone from obviously skills coach, backs coach, elevated responsibility. Do you see yourself that as a specialized role forever? Or in terms of ambitions, would you love to be a sort of director of rugby type role? Would you like to be in charge one day?
Potentially down the road. I'm in no real rush. I just think as a coach, you're always learning. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but you are always learning. I just think as an assistant, as an attack coach, as I said, I started as skills coach, backs coach, attack coach. So there was a general progression there. What I do at the moment, I suppose my passion would be the attack side of it. And I think to be a director of rugby and an attack coach, for example, it's probably a hard thing to do. There's so much stuff, as you know, that goes off goes on off the pitch, sorry, in terms of recruitment. There's just, recruitment is one, there's just so much stuff, and especially here you look at France, even in terms of your quota with Chief, you talk about recruitment here is even a lot more challenging, and there's a huge responsibility to, because you're trying to get the balance of GIF and non-GIF and getting your recruitment in early and whatnot, and the market's gone so competitive, but overall, yeah, it's something I probably, maybe in a number of years, but I just really enjoy tracksuit, working, coaching, videos, individual videos, being in amongst the boys. And I think as a director of rugby, I think that, you pull yourself away from that. And I think it's something that when I'm a small bit older, if I'm still in the game, hopefully that it's something I would look at. Yeah.
And you mentioned Ronan O'Gara recommended you for the role you're in now. And you were saying he was giving you a call just as you were coming on to join us. So I don't know if he's your agent, but I've heard him speaking about you going back to Munster and coaching there, saying what a good job you'd do. So don't know if you thank him for that or not, but have we got a world exclusive? Are you going back to Munster?
No. There's nothing. And I think, you know what, the Munster, obviously a couple of coaches are leaving at home, and there's obviously an array of coaches, Irish coaches that have come abroad in France and England and stuff. And once coaches move on, it's a natural, I suppose, reaction to go, we've coaches that are coaching in France, in La Rochelle, in Racing, and I think it's more that than anything. So, but no, I'd be very tight, Raj. We call each other a couple of times a week, so, and just exchanging rugby philosophies and general chit chat and whatnot. We played with each other in Munster, so we know each other a long time. But in terms of that, no, it's more just our general chit chat. Absolutely.
Did you call him when he tipped you for the job in the media, saying, "What are you doing? I've got a job"?
No. He's only writing these articles, so he's trying to fill it in. He's trying to fill it in.
And you mentioned earlier on some of the coaches you worked under before. So just give us an insight into who were your sort of coaching mentors, I guess, or the people you looked up to and kind of wanted to follow in their footsteps.
I suppose from a young age, there would have been Declan Kidney, who's the director of rugby in London Irish, in terms of more so in his management style. Decky was obviously a coach. He left his coach's coach, which he still does, but he was just a real kind of, I suppose, leader of men. He was able to bring everything together. He was just incredibly organised, and something that I like to pride myself on as well, as just being organised. And a lot of it, I suppose, in terms of, your day to day, I would have seen Decky on how he operated, and he ran an incredible ship at that time, and probably still does. Looking at the London Irish's season this year, they're going quite well, and the success he brought, and he won a lot of trophies in terms of Grand Slams and Heineken Cups and stuff at home. So he would have been from an overall, I suppose, head man. He was, when I was actually offered that young Munster's job when they came out of playing, I remember ringing him, asking him his advice on it. I remember him saying to me, take it, because a head job like that in a club, you learn from bottom to top and top to bottom. And I remember it was when I was in the job, it was a great place to start, and it was exactly how he had described it. You'd be dealing with from your bagman up to the committee, and it was something that stuck to me, and it was something that I'll always remember. And that's one of the reasons I would have rang someone like Decky, because he was very good at those situations and giving advice. And then I suppose then you had your technical coaches as you went along. And being honest, there was another guy that I suppose helped me, and he helped me to get in here, was Bernard Jackman, incredibly good coach. Just in Ireland, he's on the telly an awful lot. He's a brilliant. He's brilliant at doing. He's analysing. But as a coach, he was the very same. He was, I remember going into or working with him as looking at the attack and stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, and there's no disrespect or anything, but as a hooker, talking about edge plays and back plays and whatever, and the guy had it, he's knowledge from 1 to 15, as I would call it. He's a 1 to 15 coach, something that another coach who I'd worked with, Paul O'Connell from home, had that as well. Dean Ryan was another coach, who's with the Dragons now, who's with me and who I was with in Gloucester, in terms of he's 1 to 15 coach.
He coached Scotland to their highest ever Six Nations finish as well. Dean Ryan, he was my head coach when we finished third. Great coach.
Yeah, just and I'm sure you probably just from 1 to 15. So what a tight head, what a loose head.
Simplistic as well.
But absolutely, from a loose head to 15 in terms of backfield cover, he just seemed to have everything covered. And as I said, Birch was quite like that as well. And Paul O'Connell, in terms of a detailed coach, I'm talking now the last couple of years that would have worked with. Obviously, back in the day, it would have been Declan Kidney, Alan Gaffney, another coach who coached in Leinster and Munster. He was a Munster head coach. He was a brilliant technical coach. As a scrum half, he was awesome to work with. He had brilliant drills, brilliant skills drills, brilliant way of coaching. And as I said, more recent, probably the two boys, and they were both, ironically, in France, but Irish guys would have been, and it's not because they're Irish, it's genuinely working with them, would have been Bernard and Paul O'Connell would be, as a coach, up there to probably be as good as I've seen. He obviously, he would have been well schooled over the years through the experiences, through the lines and everything, but a lot of his stuff he would refer to would have been through Joe Schmidt, and especially detail and systems around the breakdown and whatnot. And I got a lot of learnings from that. I got a lot of learnings from forwards play in terms of, because I would do obviously the backs and the attack includes obviously your forwards as well, and carries and whatnot. And through Paul, it would have been a lot of learning, I have to say, yeah.
And given how highly you talk of him, are you surprised that Bernard isn't in a coaching role at the moment, or is he a bit like Johnny and he fancies the easy life in the media?
Yeah, no, you know what? He enjoyed France, so did his family. He went to Wales. His family weren't with him. He was over on his own, and I think he wanted to be settled back in Ireland. So the opportunity through his media is probably an easier life. He still does a bit of coaching. And he's working for a company. So I think the balance overall kind of suits him, and he's happy with that. And he's lived it, he's done it, he's seen it. But in terms of rugby knowledge, incredibly well-rounded.
We've touched on this before, Johnny. You don't fancy the coaching hours, do you?
I'm out, mate. I'm in the southwest. I'm at the beach. I'm happy. Leave me alone.
Yeah, absolutely. There's pros and cons. There's pros and cons for sure.
There are. My biggest fear, honestly, and you mentioned a guy like Bernard, who every player that I spoke to loved working with him, but for one reason or another, it wouldn't end up working well, and he'd be moved on. And that was always my fear, moving from rugby to the possibility of coaching was. Like you, I've moved around from Glasgow to Montpellier to Castres to Bayonne. We found somewhere that we're happy and settled. But you know that with professional rugby, as a coach or a player, it's cutthroat, and it's 2-year contracts and 3-year contracts. I didn't want to take the risk of having to move my family around continually, because I'd have been a terrible coach and I got sacked after 6 months at every club. So
that's understandable. That is
which happens.
Exactly. That is the risks you go with. 100%. 100%. I agree with you. It is the risks.
And look, we've talked about some of the big stars you've got, Racing, the Finn Russells, the Kurtley Beales. I just want to mention one of the youngsters, because talk to us about Ronan O'Gara, because he's someone that maybe not everyone will have heard of outside of France. And he has got a certain Antoine Dupont ahead of him in the scrum half pecking order there. But a lot of people are excited about him. So just give us an insight into how good he is.
Yeah, he's a super talent. He's a guy, as you said, that not too many probably have heard about him yet, but they will quite soon, I think. Incredible talent, incredible competitor. That's, he's obviously got huge talent. He works really, really hard. He's really driven. He's challenging, which is great for a coach. And as a 9, I suppose you'd always kind of strike up those relationships with halfbacks. But he's so competitive. Unfortunately, he's injured at the moment. So he's been out for a while, and look, he's got Max Mashno there, Teddy Ibrahim, so he's got a lot of quality as well that he's pushing against. Teddy has been out for this season, unfortunately, with a cruciate as well, and Max has been playing a lot of games regularly and playing very, very well. So he's taking little bits of learnings from all them as well. Incredibly quick, really good passing game. He's dangerous. He's strong. He's got pretty much everything. He's got phenomenal footwork, and he's someone that I think, provided I'm sure he'll get past this injury. He's had a little shoulder operation. Hopefully he'll come back this around March, and I could see someone that will really explode onto the scene probably next season.
2023 World Cup, John. He's one to watch out for. Isn't he?
I've done a few of his games for Premier Sports this year, and he's been sensational.
Great place kicker, which shows these composure, the mentality of the kid. You know, he's, as I said, he follows rugby, he studies it, he's challenging in a very positive manner. he's got a lot going for him, a huge amount going for him. And he's a great lad on top of it. He trains the house down. He's like a lot of this new generation, young French players. They want detail. They want to know. They want to know why. I think traditionally, maybe over the last number of years, maybe when I started here, you know, detail maybe wasn't the front of everything for them. Now the players, they're a lot more challenging, and it's not by chance. I think you're looking at them and potentially being number 1, 2, or 3 in the world with all the talent they've had, and they've always had kind of that talent. But when you marry that with small bit of structure, detail, and even the game over here, the top 14, Johnny, I'm sure you've seen it, boys, as well. Just ball in play. There's a lot more, and I know it sounds a bit strange, but there's a lot more 4G pitches, hybrid pitches, so the game is quicker. The game is a lot quicker. So
and the ball in play,
huge amount. You often hear people saying about you know, it's a marathon, it's a slugfest of it. I think people take that up still as being a slugfest, as in a slow game. It's not a slow game here anymore. It's a marathon and a slugfest in terms of it's so long, in terms of from it's the bones of 10 or 11 months or 10 months, whatever way you look at it. But in terms of the game and ball in play, the speed of it, the speed of ruck, it's massively pushing on, and it's not by chance. That's why I think the French team, when you marry in all those ideas or those ways, I just think it's along with the talent they have, you talk about 2023, they're going in the right direction, and they're being well, I suppose, led there at the moment with the French coaching staff that are in there.
And the way the game's going over here is suited to a bloke like Nolan, his determination. I already pegged him as a young Morgan Parra, but Benji Kaiser told me I was getting excited and I couldn't compare him to his old mate, Morgan Parra. But for me, he's as good as, if not physically better.
I can remember, when I was in Bourgogne, Morgan was there. So Morgan played with us, and he was 10, and I got injured. And Miguel Forrest, he was another number 9. He was injured. So Morgan ended up going in number 9. And I remember the first game watching him, and I just said to myself, this guy's got, he's going one way only. And it didn't matter as a 9 or a 10. He obviously ended up as 9 at an incredible, and still is an incredible player. He's quite similar. I would think Nolan's probably a bit more agile. He's a bit quicker. He's very, very quick. He's lightning quick, and he's got lightning footwork. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities between them, actually, when I think about it now. Yeah, knowing them both at the same age, Morgan would have been challenging, and you know, he knew where he wanted to go, and he went there. And I think Nolan is definitely going that way as well. You know, he's got rugby in his blood as well. He's, as I said, he's a student of the game as well.
The other new face I wanted to ask you about, so he was in the academy when I was at Cast, is Johan Tanga, who's been impressive for you over the past few seasons, and now just been named in his first French squad, which is incredible for him. So I wanted to give us a little take on his personality, the type of player as well that he is, because that is a huge statement for him to get selected in his first squad. Yeah,
and massively deserving as well. He's been definitely our most consistent player this year. He's personality-wise, he's a lovely guy. He's a quiet kind of guy, unassuming, gets on with his job, doesn't say a huge amount. I think the one thing that separates him is his footballing skills. He's incredibly comfortable. So for us, it suits us massively, especially down the edges. He's got really, really good footwork. As you know him, Johnny, he's not the biggest of guy.
No, he's not a massive man.
He's not, but he's got really good footwork before contact, and it's just his skill set sets him apart. So he's a great, I suppose, number 8 in terms of strike plays. If you're running patterns and you want a player to pull these passes in behind, he's just so comfortable. So you can actually, for me, what I try to do here is try to build a lot around him, even though we've huge names and huge talents. But in his position, pivotal position, as you well remember, Johnny, it's you can put a lot through him, and he's been incredible for us. He's moving on, unfortunately for us, to La Rochelle next year. They're getting a heck of a player. Good signing for Raj and Donncha Ryan down there.
Did he call you about that?
We'll miss him here. Raj wasn't ringing me about him, by the way.
Cheers, Raj.
I didn't get a call for a few weeks when a few of our boys signed down there, but that's the professional sport we live in, isn't it? But so yeah, I'm delighted for Johan to get called in, and as as you alluded to, you look at the French back rows at the moment and the strength and depth that's there. That's a huge achievement alone, getting into the squad at the moment. He's young enough to progress, which he will. And he's got a big future ahead of him as well, Johan. Yeah.
And you mentioned France as one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the world. France went well in the autumn. Ireland went well in the autumn. You've got a foot in both camps. Who's winning the Six Nations?
I have to say Ireland. No, it's going to be really interesting in terms of, even you look at the English squad today being picked. There's a lot of young boys in there that are incredibly talented boys, Mark Smith, etc. So for me, and you look at Scotland, I think over the last couple of years.
You don't have to mention Scotland. You don't have to.
Scotland have showed what they're capable of, I should say. Wales obviously are a very, very good side. Of a lot of injuries, just looking at the amount of caps they're short in this Six Nations. So that could be a tough one for them. And Italy, we all hope that they improve as things go on, you know. So, but I definitely think France and Ireland are probably maybe ahead of everyone at the moment, probably in terms of their depth as well. So if you do get injuries, that they have guys to step in. But yeah, between Ireland and France, it's a hard one to call. I think, hard one to call. I'll leave it at that.
And just finally bringing it back to the Champions Cup. I know you weren't there for the first couple of defeats in the final that Racing had, but you mentioned the last one. Just how painful was that for everyone, and how much does it drive you all on to wanting to reach the pinnacle again this year and go one better?
It does. And as I said, you can see the weeks that you come in and you have Champions Cup, the level and the intensity goes up. There's a different, we call it, as the French call it, there's a different air there when the weeks are Champions Cup. And going back to the final, probably the hardest, being a final as well, it was the hardest defeat that I've come across, definitely as a coach, you know, because I hadn't ever been to Champions Cup. But I just remember looking around the dressing room and looking at boys that last 3 finals, Wen Laurie's last 4 finals, one with Biarritz as well. My heart, I just went out to them, to be honest, Shan. The other side of it, they left nothing out there. You couldn't have asked for any more in a final. We played well. And until Clastons gets over the line, gets pulled back. You know, so a really, really tough one to swallow. But professional sport moves on, and we had to, and we came in following week and we're into the top 14. Obviously this year back into the 2 competitions, and as I said, there's a hunger. There's a huge hunger there. There's a huge want, both from all the staff and from the players. And as I said, a lot of those players here have lost 3 finals. There's a bit of a turnover. It was well documented. We've 23 players out of contract this year. So there's probably a good 7 or 8 players that would have been here for a number of years, like Max Machino and Teddy Thomas are moving on. So I'm sure, and I know that, you know, they do want to win something together, and hopefully this could be the year for us. But there's a lot of quality teams out there, and obviously to get back deep into the competition, you need to be consistent, and hopefully we can kick on, and that's our goal.
We're looking good at the moment, and thanks so much for coming on and sharing your insight with us, and good luck for securing that number 1 seeding this weekend.
Great stuff. Thanks for having me on, guys. Great to chat.
Thanks for joining us, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, boys.
Really interesting to have Mike on, and a couple of bits that stood out. I mean, firstly, obviously the motivation of Racing in terms of other top 14 clubs that may not be motivated in the Champions Cup. They're clearly hurting and really want to win it. But more than anything, how he started, he could have ended up anywhere in the world, sending his CV off everywhere.
Incredible. No, you're right. Insightful on the sort of wider picture of Racing as a club, and you can see the passion that he has for the sport and for his club and his players, which was great. But more importantly, like you mentioned, the route and how he did it, the fact that he sent out his CV, and it could have been you end up working in Ireland, which is the easier option if you can find a spot, or in England or New Zealand, like you mentioned, in your first language. But the fact that you take up a spot in Grenoble as a skills coach without the language and work your way up to become the attack coach at Racing 92, one of the biggest clubs in the world, is insane. So no, that was great to hear about his story, his travels, and his route. Just fantastic. And again, you could tell he absolutely loved the sport, like the way he talks about his club and his players. No, just superb to have him on. Great guy.
Right. It's about time we did our meter moment of the week, isn't it? So do you want to take it away, Johnny?
Yeah, an alternative one this week, but one that I really enjoyed watching. So because he was part of a side that won 45-10, and they played some fantastic flowing rugby, some of it was champagne. Somebody that's been on the podcast who normally plays wing or fullback and is a very, very talented man, because he got asked to play 9 and did it and made it look easy and was making the opposition look stupid. So Santi Cordero, for his performance, I think being told he was playing scrum half the day before the game as well. It wasn't even in the plan, last minute injuries, and the way that he played was integral to that Birdo performance where they were utterly dominant. So our meter moment of this weekend's rugby is Santi Cordero and his performance as a scrum half instead of his regular slot as winger. He was superb.
Carreras plays on the wing for Gloucester, fly half for Argentina. You never know. Cordero could play scrum half for Argentina.
Easy. Well, that, I mean, I don't know. You've got people that have slotted in. We've had some Bergamasco experiments in the past that have been disastrous. You don't go from back row to scrum half, but Santi, I mean, the guy's a phenomenon with ball in hand, but the way he distributed the ball, the way he kicked, all of it, amazing to watch, an amazing performance.
That was Johnny's meter moment of the week. And Meter is the world's #1 wireless meat thermometer. They've made over 9 million cooks better with their revolutionary app as well. So it's no surprise their users are growing rapidly every day. If you've ever said your pork or turkey's dry, then Meter is for you. And you can use it on a barbecue, in the oven, or in a pan. Enter a whole new world of cooking and join the Metaverse at meter.com. And just use the code FrenchPod10 at checkout for 10% off any full price item as well. We chatted a little bit about round 3 earlier on, so let's have a quick look ahead to round 4 of the Champions Cup now then, and the various permutations. Racing and La Rochelle are through already. Realistically, Bordeaux and Toulouse are going to join them. Which other French sides, Johnny, are making it through?
Incredibly, after last week's game, potentially Montpellier. If they can pick up a point or 2 points at home this weekend, I'll be at that one for BT Sport, but I mean, potentially they can go through. And it looks like they're the only French side really, I think, that are in with a decent sniff, but you never know. They're definitely going to line a much strengthened side this weekend, a bit of changed attitude. The fact they're at home, they're up against Exeter, which is a massive task. And again, champions of this competition for obvious reasons. They've been superb over the past few years. Can they do it? I don't know. But if they pick up a point, they're another sniff. So Montpellier potentially. Otherwise, I think we're looking like the obvious ones are through. But Montpellier only is the only one that could really squeak through with the last game.
Tougher cast, I guess, away at Quins. Clermont may make it through even if they don't get anything away at Ulster, I guess.
Potentially. You got to think Cass going to Harlequins is going to be hard. Although the loss that Cass suffered in the first or second round, I can't remember which round it was, they were in the game for long periods and it wasn't by much they lost. So in terms of power and physicality, they're absolutely in that game. They could nick it, but Harlequins have been very, very good over the past few weekends. So that's a big game for Cass. And again, that'll depend on what side they stick out and send over there against Quins. And
Stade Francais, as crazy as it sounds, I mean, they could even do it if they beat Connacht at home.
They could do. They've currently got 2 points. They're sitting on 2 points, but win this weekend and that's it. You jump ahead of Cast. And if Wasps lose, again, you can nick into 8 spots. So it is possible. Against Stade Francais, haven't consistently been good over the past month and a half, but stranger things have happened. So again, they'll be looking to get back on track, fighting for pride at home before they kick off the top 14 again. So it could be done.
Thanks, Johnny. A big thanks to Mike Prendergast for joining us as well. And thanks to all you guys for listening. Make sure you hit subscribe, leave us a nice review as well if you can. Check us out on Rugby Pass and on YouTube. And we'll be back with another episode next week. Au revoir, Johnny.
Cheers, Tim.